The life of a pirate was a demanding one. A successful pirate captain needed to take opportunities as soon as they arose, often with little to no notice, all the while maintaining the fitness and health of their crew. As you can most likely imagine, this meant that food was often few and far between when out at sea, and a captain needed to sail a well-stocked ship to ensure their fellow pirates wouldn't go hungry, lose morale, or even die out at sea. Despite the fact that many pirate captains were known across the sea for their wealth, the food they consumed wasn't particularly lavish, nor was it expensive. Many pirates ate the same types of food as their crew members, and rations needed to be strictly controlled to avoid running out of resources when on the job. Today we will be taking a look at how pirates sustained themselves when out on the waves. Travelling back to the golden age of piracy, prominently taking place across the Caribbean around the early 1700s, we're going to explore exactly which kinds of food your average pirates ate, and how they obtained that food. Sit back and relax as we take you through the menu of a typical 18th century oceanic plunderer. Welcome to Walk the Plank. Meat and animal produce. Plundering in areas of the world where such an abundant array of farming techniques and wild animals persisted, pirates were no strangers to meat, and it was readily accessible along the coastlines of the western Atlantic Ocean. Meat was, however, typically eaten later on in a pirate's journey, after any fresh produce on board had been prioritized or had gone rotten. In this case, specifically cured or dried meat. Pirates had their own techniques, however, in times of hardship, and some captains would permit their crew members to keep and look after domestic animals of their own. Chickens and cows were such examples of this. Pirates would typically keep caged chickens or domestic cows held below the decks, feeding them on hay, seed, and vegetables kept in the ship's storage. Whilst alive, chickens would routinely provide their pirates with their eggs, which were cooked on board the ship. The cows, on the other hand, could produce milk used for both drinking and in cooking, and could be turned into butter and cheese. It was a rather self-sufficient food economy, almost like a little ecosystem running on board the ship. However, some pirates found themselves at sea for extended lengths of time, long enough for any fresh produce to spoil, rendering it inedible. When all the vegetable or plant matter on board the ship had been consumed or had expired, the pirates would slaughter their domesticated animals one by one, where their meat was used in a variety of different cooking methods. A common meat-based dish enjoyed by many a Caribbean pirate was bone soup. Once rumoured to be made from human bones, this was a dish that was in fact crafted from the bones of slaughtered chickens and cows, boiled up in a nutritious broth. Cow meat in particular could sustain the crew for long periods of time if salted or pickled. This did take some of the nutrients away, but the pirates wouldn't go hungry when tucking into cured beef jerky or dried steaks. Some pirates wouldn't even let the notion of spoiled food bother them. If times were exceptionally tough, cooks on board pirate ships would make do with what they had, combining spoiled meat with an array of herbs and spices in order to salvage what little flavour it might offer. Strangely, pirates did not commonly eat fish. You'd think that, being out at sea, surrounded by nothing but tropical islands and lapping warm waves, they would take every chance they could get to throw a net overboard and haul in a catch. But this was not so. Pirates were busy enough as it was, with their ad hoc and often shoddily managed crews. Pirates found fishing too time-consuming, as not enough fish were typically caught when attempting it. The practice was quickly abandoned, and crews tended to favour bringing all the necessary food aboard with them instead. Having said that, it is entirely possible that fish was on the menu at certain times, perhaps times of desperation or hardship. Some pirates were even known to hunt and scavenge around the islands and shores of the Caribbean. Seabirds and turtle eggs were consumed if a pirate was in a drastic situation. There is even a record of some pirates killing and eating sharks when they needed to. Vegetables, pulses, and more. It wasn't just meat that pirates consumed when out at sea, however. A wide range of vegetables and fruits accompanied their meat, eggs, and cheeses. Due to spoiling, fruits and vegetables were often prioritized or pickled to ensure longevity for trips that took more time. Fruits and vegetables allowed the pirates to nourish themselves with a variety of vitamins as well as fiber and potassium. But when supplies ran out, crew members resorted to eating legumes or pulses instead. Typical pirate snacks consisted of sea biscuits, a very hard form of cracker like bread or biscuit made using baking powder and soda. Known also as hardtack, this was a staple food for many pirates without a consistent supply of food or produce coming into the ship. The advantage to keeping and consuming sea biscuits when out on voyages was their long-lasting nature. Pirates could keep large boxes of them stored below decks without running the risk of going hungry. Sure, there wasn't much in the ways of nutrients or vitamins, but sea biscuits provided basic sustenance in times of culinary hardship. Bread was also eaten when available, which was often served with butter and cheese. Rations were at times small due to the short supplies of food carried on the ship. Due to the fact that pirates were often out evading the law, they could often not risk stopping over at ports in case they were recognized by the authorities, arrested, and hung. Therefore, many pirates had to make do with poor-tasting food and meager portions to match. Some pirate captains even needed to turn to extreme measures when running out of food. When pirate captain Henry Morgan and his crew became stranded in 1670, they were in a desperate situation when they began to run out of food. No food had been salvaged in the wreck of their ship, and the island was too barren to support Henry and his men. In a bizarre but drastic action, Henry Morgan and his crew began to shred their leather satchels and clothing, proceeding to fry it up over a fire. Once they cooked it as best as they could have done, they tucked in, presumably with very uncomfortable results. Morgan and his crew were eventually able to find their way back to shore. Things were even worse for Captain Charlotte de Berry, who found herself in a very similar position with her pirate crew, stranded on a small barren island in the Caribbean. Charlotte and her crew drastically took the most extreme measure possible. They killed and ate 2 slaves, resorting to a brutal act of cannibalism. When this wasn't enough, the crew turned on Charlotte's husband, killing him, cooking him, and serving him in the absence of real food. This brings us to the video's next section. Problems with food. It turns out that difficulties in obtaining food were the least of a pirate's worries in the immediate short term. Pirates operating at sea for extended periods of time typically tended to eat the same things: bread, meat, sea biscuits, and pulses once supplies of fruits and vegetables had diminished. This degree of repetitivity in a pirate's diet could be dangerous, even lethal. If there's one ailment associated with pirates more than any other, it's scurvy. And unlike the wooden prosthetic legs and missing eyes, scurvy was a very real, very dangerous threat. Fruits and vegetables provided the human's digestive system with vital vitamin C, the antioxidant vitamin that helps repair and protect your body's cells and tissues against disease and other potentially dangerous particles taken in by food or drink. A pirate suffering from scurvy might have experienced constant weak and feeble sensations in the body, as well as bleeding gums and yellow teeth, or even a lack of teeth as they began to fall out as the disease progressed. Painful red spots would begin popping up all over an afflicted pirate's skin, and bruises would easily develop. Not a particularly useful ailment for a pirate to have given their tumultuous and dangerous line of work. For pirates afflicted with scurvy, it was often a race against time. Vitamin C was an urgent priority for someone suffering from the disease, meaning that in the times before supplements and tablets, a pirate needed a steady intake of fruits and vegetables in order to stay alive. It was a potentially fatal matter in some instances. Pirates who managed to reinstate their intake of fruits and vegetables would have made a steady recovery in a few weeks, but many pirates perished to the disease when out on the waves for extended periods of time. It's actually estimated that between 2 million and 3 million sailors, piratical or otherwise, lost their lives to the disease between the 16th and 18th centuries around the golden age of piracy. If there was ever an argument for eating your greens, this is it. Of course, cautiously docking a wanted ship at a busy port was not the only way that pirates tackled issues surrounding resources or a lack of food. After all, what was the one reason that pirates became pirates? To plunder ships. And what did even the most basic of those ships contain, but enough food to feed their crews? Pirates who were successful in their raids were often able to claim the opposing ship's food supplies as their own. Often these spoils wouldn't be too different from the sustenance on board their own ship, but merchant ships carrying goods from one port to another were different stories. Merchant ships were often targeted by pirates who would make a point of raiding food supplies. If a merchant ship was captured nearby to its home port, pirates were even in with a chance of replenishing their fruit and vegetable supplies. Much bigger bounties, however, were whaling ships. Pirates were known to often attack whaling ships for both the weapons and the food resources on board. Not only the food used to sustain the sailors, but the whales themselves. A successful raid on a whaling ship could see a pirate captain and his crew overloaded with meat for the foreseeable journey. So there you have it, the life of a pirate in the golden age wasn't all glamorous. Food represented a genuine hardship for many buccaneers out at sea in the 18th century, and for some it even caused violent and painful deaths. A successful pirate needed to plan everything in minute detail, making sure that every man, woman, and animal on board had enough sustenance to last for a planned amount of time. One miscalculation or mistake in preparation, and that was it. An entire crew could be reduced to a few sickly sailors in a matter of weeks. The next time you throw your food away, spare a thought for the men and women that had to eat leather satchels, or even each other, with their stranded pirate crews. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week for another video. Cheers!